I think the number of attendees and the commendations of Gary in all of his different volunteer activities is a tribute to him. And Gary, you should be blushing by now.
I am.
But thanks everybody for attending. Let me start by introducing our guest, Gary Hedden. He arrived in the Bay Area in 1972 to work for Syntex as a research chemist. After 37 years with Syntex and Roche, he retired in 2009, and after 1 year, he decided there was more to retirement than working on household chores. He became active with Greentown Los Altos and the Los Altos History Museum, and that started an active second career as a community volunteer. This was recognized when he was named the 2022 Los Altan of the Year. This morning, he will tell you a bit more about that experience and his efforts at community building. He will also offer some thoughts about building stronger neighborhoods in Los Altos. Please join me in welcoming Gary Hedden, 2022 Los Altan of the Year this morning.
Thanks, Dave. This has been quite a year. It started out back in January 4th. There I am, my picture, town crier, front page, top of the fold. And it went on for several weeks, people congratulating me, and it was really delightful, humbling, but I was proud of that moment. I have to tell you one quick story. In October, just recently, I was out knocking on doors in support of Measure A, the parcel tax for the school district. And I was walking around Springer School, because that's where our kids went to school. I was walking on Cuesta in Mountain View, and see, I'm knocking on the door, and a lady is peeking out from the kitchen window. And suddenly she says, "I know you, you're Gary, Mr. Los Altos." So I'm pretty sure that was a yes vote for the parcel tax. A little bit about my story. Thank you, David, for what you already said. I did start in 72, got married in 75 to Pat, the love of my life, who's standing in the corner there, shaking her head. We moved to Los Altos in that year. And in 09, I retired. I have to say one thing of my pharmaceutical research career. There's one drug I worked on that you will recognize, everybody, I think, in the room. See if I can get that in focus. Aleve. All day long, all day strong. It's a good drug, and I like the motto. It's kind of me too. But then the question is, what now? And Joe Iyer, who was in the audience here, thank you, Joe, for showing up. He asked me to help with an exhibit at the History Museum, Shaped by Water, by Linda Gass, who was also on the line. And so that really started things off, because that was the two groups that I became and still am very involved with, the History Museum and Greentown, Los Altos. It combined my passions for both history and the environment. So it was a good blend. Thank you, Joe, for setting that up. So after 14 years, I've learned that when you get involved, you get connected to other people. And this network of people, knowing and working with other people, makes for a stronger community. You become invested in the community. You feel that this is my community, this is my neighborhood, and you're more willing to be supportive of doing things that will help the community. I also think that good urban design is important. That's one of the fundamentals that at the very start. And for me, the three things that come to mind are, and there are a lot of components to it, but I like tree-lined boulevards. I like a nearby park, city park, and I like a nearby grocery store. If we have those things, you have the bones for a good neighborhood. When it comes to tree-lined boulevards, if a street is attractive, you're going to be more likely to get out and walk, maybe bike. You're going to meet your neighbors. Maybe at first it's just to say hi, but this is the start of making these connections. And then as far as parks, we live near Rosita Park, and I walked my Springer Spaniel there for 12 years before it was called a dog. We didn't have dog parks in those days. You just go to the park. And I met so many people and became connected to the neighborhood that way and people in the neighborhood. I like the quarter-mile rule, at least that's what I call it. You should have a park that you can walk to within a quarter of a mile. That's a reasonable walking distance. Doesn't take too much time. If you look at a map of Los Altos, you're going to see that the parks aren't evenly distributed. There are areas in North Los Altos and South Los Altos that don't have nearby parks. So I would love it if we could do something to change that. Back to the trees. 2 years ago, I had one of the things that we do at Greentown is we have a summer internship program. And I had 2 interns working on creating a roadmap to a tree master plan for the city, because we really don't have one. And it turns out we don't have a lot of money to fund trees, putting trees into expanding the urban tree canopy anyway. Anyway, the 2 students, they're pretty bright kids. We've had so much fun working with summer interns, by the way. They presented the findings to the EC, Environmental Commission, and we'll see where that can go. As far as you probably know, I'm involved with planting trees. I have the 500 trees campaign going on. We're up to tomorrow. I'm actually going to plant number 417. This will be at the Neutra House with a group of Girl Scouts. I like planting trees for the city because they don't have the funds to do it. So we'll step in and do it and have some fun working with the Scouts. Now, as far as the grocery stores, the thing about that is that it just makes life easier. If you can hop on a bike or just walk to a store when you're suddenly short a quart of milk and not have to jump into a car, that's a real benefit. So back to Greentown, we have other activities besides the internships and tree planting. We have creek cleanups, bike rides, and there's one coming up, the winter solstice night bike ride, December 21st. I'll be leading that. We leave from Pete's on State Street and go to Palo Alto and look at the Christmas lights on Christmas Tree Lane. It's at night, so make sure your night lights work. And then back to the schools, we have an active program called WOW, Walker Wheels, trying to make it more likely that the kids will walk or ride a bike to school, make sure it's safe, make sure they become skilled at it, get the training they need. Our feeling is that kids who ride bikes become adults who ride bikes. At the History Museum, we like working with the kids as well. We have a teen docent program. We give them worthwhile activities that they enjoy and that they value. And it helps us reach out adults like their parents. We have lots of volunteer opportunities at the History Museum. There's hundreds. We have docents who give Smith House tours, who lead people through the galleries. We have store clerks. We have committees that work in the garden, on the facilities, exhibits. We collect oral histories. It just goes on and on. This is a very active group. This year, thank you, Dr. Ward, we started a new program called Third Thursdays. And this is a chance to bring in experts and for panel discussions about some of the exhibits that we're showing. Also to bring in people from the neighborhoods. We had North Los Altos once, and people came in and they had so many good stories to share. We wrote that up in the newsletter. We had the Gemelos, the winery in North Los Altos. We had the neighbors come in and talk about that. We had the owner of that tell that history. It's just a lot of fun. So every third Thursday except December, we do this. These conversations are part of building up good, strong neighborhood networks. Schools are hugely important. Our 2 kids were in the schools here, and that gave us connections to the PTA, sports, school events, and we met lifelong friends. I'm still working with the schools. The high schools in particular are wonderful source of volunteer help. The kids are looking for service hours. We have the Slobs, Service League of Boys. We have the girls equivalent, Together We Can, the National Charity League, Scouts, of course. I'm right now working with Troop 75 for a scout planning project in a week. These are all important groups and help create these connections that we're talking about. Also with the schools, associated with the schools are really important groups in town. Mentor-tutor connection, for example, started to work 25 years ago by Bob Adams and Marge Bruno. It matches adults with students, and it's been very helpful. I know some of the adults personally have made strong connections there. That's very satisfying volunteer experience. Living Classroom, that was started in 2007 by Vicki Moore, using garden-based teaching to provide hands-on experience. Very popular with the kids. It started with the LASD schools, and it's growing into some other schools, districts as well now. Project Cornerstone. Trained volunteers work with the schools. Once a month, they get together, helping with lesson plans that help the students build their self-esteem and their ability to just to cope with life. These are all important functions. The list goes on and on. We have the Rotary, people here from the Rotary, brings us a very active group. We have the Kiwanis with the Pet Parade, another active group. We have the Stage Company. Thank you, Vicki Reeder, for making that happen and last for 25 years. I mean, how many little communities have their own theater? This is a real blessing. The Garden Club, it's almost 100 years old now, and they still meet monthly. It's a very active group. Another one that I enjoy is the Audubon Society. They have an active group out of Cupertino, but it's a chance to get out and do bird walks. They've been around for 100 years too. We have a new group in town, Arts Los Altos, that's putting up murals. Maddie McBurney's involved with that. We have churches. Churches build really strong ties with their members. And we're working with St. Nicholas Elementary School right now. You know all those trees that came down on El Monte during the March windstorm? Well, of course, Greentown wanted to get involved in putting some trees back in that area. We're working with the school. We got a grant from Sereno Group. They're 1% for good. I'm working with Valley Water, and I think I'll be able to get a mini grant from them for $5,000. So we're going to put some trees up there. Watch out for that. Maybe as early as next January. Libraries are important. Lots of activities for kids there. Downtown vitality is important. The Chamber of Commerce is active. Thank you, Kim Mosley. LAVA, Los Altos Village Association with Scott Hunter. The city has built a new community center. I hope you've been out to see that. It's beautiful. It's in its second year now. The State Street Market. Hi, Robert. That's a wonderful new addition. And Citrella's moved in now, so I'm looking forward to the new location. I'm looking forward to going to there, and some of the early reviews are very promising. And First Friday was mentioned. These are all important, and it's what builds the sense of place for Los Altos. It makes us proud to be Los Altans. Now, on a really granular level, we've got truly neighborhood groups. We have the Neighborhood Watch, which initially is focused on crime and crime prevention and security, but it can grow into other directions. George Tyson has a group of 40 up in Los Altos Hills, and they meet regularly, I believe. We have the BAT groups here in town, and Harry is here and others involved with that. This is to generate emergency preparedness, be ready for that, whatever that comes along. you can go to the website and look at where the BATS groups are located, and they're scattered around the city. There's room for growth. There are a lot of places that don't have the BAT groups. I'm sure they were active last March when we had the power outages. There's going to be, speaking of next March, there's going to be a new exhibit at the museum called dealing with earthquake. It's called Earthquakes to Epidemics and how to deal with these challenges. And it's being co-sponsored by the Rotary. Thank you, Rotary. We also have neighborhood block parties. And we had one in our block. It was really just very just from the local people putting it together. And I know there are other groups that have regular block parties. Ours fell apart when people moved out and things changed. A lot of it has to do with having kids in the neighborhood, to tell you the truth. So I think if we could get more of those going, it would be helpful. Mountain View has a program actually that supports it. So maybe we can get a couple of Mountain View council members on the line. Maybe we can get some feedback from them about what works. Some of the neighborhoods have active email news groups. And that's a handy way. I've gotten some information about the trees out to neighborhoods that way. Anyway, there's so many connections, and they contribute to making a stronger Los Altos. So I think to wrap it up, my message would be, we have a wealth of opportunities. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but volunteer and continue to volunteer. It's good for you and good for the community. I'm going to keep pushing for more city parks and more city trees. And I think we should consider what kind of incentives might work to make our block party ideas more prevalent. So that's it. I believe you have some questions for me, and I'd also like to hear, before our time is up, from people in the audience and some of their experience. What do they think would work well to build a stronger Los Altos? David, back to you.
Gary, thank you very much for the great presentation. First question, what can people within a neighborhood do to make their neighborhood stronger? I think you've already touched on this somewhat, but if you could add anything you might not have mentioned in your presentation.
Well, it takes a little work. You do have to organize a bit. It's more than just walking around and seeing people and chatting. But if you could organize the block parties, organize the bats, get more of those going, I think that'd be the way to do it.
Great. And what do you feel are the benefits to residents of being within a strong neighborhood?
It's just satisfying to know that you're not just living in a place with a bunch of houses, but you know the people in those houses. So get out there and start to meet your neighbors. And again, back to the bats. You know, if there's a problem, you can help and they can help you. So make sure that we just need to build that program.
Great. What do you feel the connection is between community building and creating strong neighborhoods?
Community building, I guess the way to build the strong neighborhoods, you know, we like competitions. Right now, the sports teams are entering their college football teams are entering their conference championships and all that. Maybe have a championship, have a round to promote the idea of building strong neighborhoods. Greentown entered a contest called Strongest Town in America. And there were a bunch of other little towns. It's been going on for many years now. And towns enter this contest, answer some set questions and talk about how they're becoming building their vitality and building stronger communities. We made it to the first cut, and then we lost to Selma, North Carolina, of all things. They had a good story too. They had an active group called Activate Selma. And so no shame in losing to them. But maybe we could do something like that with neighborhoods, have a contest with build the strongest neighborhood. And it would promote the idea. Get the story in the town crier. And little competitions, stir things up.
Good idea. In your opinion, what extent do city policies such as zoning deter the development of strong neighborhoods?
Well, zoning certainly does make an impact. We, like all suburban communities, have created urban sprawl, and that has impacted what neighborhoods look like. We're very car dependent. So maybe the zoning could change to allow more what's called the missing middle, fourplexes, for example, within single family residential areas.
What do you see as the low-hanging fruit for creating stronger neighborhoods in Los Altos?
Well, things that are not expensive. And my idea to have more parks, that's going to cost a lot of money because land is so expensive. But doing the bats, doing neighborhood watch.
One sec.
Those things can be done. It's not, it may be low hanging. It doesn't make it mean it's easy. Somebody still has to do it. And people are so busy, it's hard to find the time sometimes, but you need motivated people, dedicated.
How do strong neighborhoods relate to 15-minute cities?
Yeah, 15-minute city. That's an urban design concept that says that the things you need should be within 15 minutes, whether it's walking or biking, and not driving. So it gets back to my idea with the parks and the grocery store, but even work. If you could be within 15 minutes of work and not have to do these horrible commutes, that's why you need to build more housing stock. And that's where I come up with the idea of the fourplex, for example. I mean, the executive director at the Hitch Museum, sorry to put you on the spot here, Elizabeth, but she commutes from the East Bay. We have teachers who are commuting from the East, from hours away. This is not good. Our house, we bought it in 75. It had been owned by a teacher. A teacher could own a house back in 75. Anyway, times have changed.
In large cities, freeways often separate neighbors and neighborhoods. In Los Altos, some feel that the Foothill Expressway and San Antonio Road do the same thing by creating dangerous barriers between neighborhoods. What ideas do you have for making the Foothill Expressway, San Antonio Road, and other such dangerous roads less barriers between neighborhoods and neighbors and safer for pedestrians and bicyclists? I know it's something you've worked on for a long time.
Yeah, that's a long question, and it really takes a long answer, but they are barriers. The neighbors on the two sides don't easily get together. I mean, one solution would be to put a bridge across. That'd be safe, could even be attractive. Costs a little money.
And finally, if you had a magic wand, what is the one thing you would do to advance strong neighborhoods in Los Altos?
I love the idea of a magic wand. Be nice to be able to say, oh, let's have world peace, wouldn't it? But as far as Los Altos goes, I'm thinking the things that are really annoying right now to so many people are cars and car traffic, speeding cars, and parking. Hello, is parking an issue? Of course. So my magic wand would be advance the timetable on what's actually already happening, which is the self-driving car. If we had a fleet of these moving around, and it was really reliable and really safe. And maybe in 10 or 15 years it'll be there. So my magic wand would just bump that up to next year. But anyway, that could really solve a lot of problems. Maybe it's safer to ride your bike for the kids. Cars wouldn't be parked on the street. You wouldn't have to own a car. Think of the savings. You're gonna have to pay for a ride. It's like Uber without a driver. Anyway, that's my dream.
Thank you again for a great conversation. I'd like to now open it up to the attendees for questions. Please use the reactions button to raise your virtual hand, and I'll call on you. Remember, one question per person and no speeches, please. Adine.
Thanks, David. No speeches. I do want to thank Gary for his work with our youth volunteers and youth philanthropy, which gets to the question. One of the criticisms we get about youth programming and how we support our youth is that they're not going to stay in our community, that they leave. How do you address that as an issue?
You're asking me?
Yeah. Altan of the year, you still your term is still in place.
we have to have some of that affordable housing. That's the only way to make it possible, isn't it? And so we're building a lot of housing right now. Some of it's attractive and some of it is less so, but I still think the missing middle is the way to go. Get more multiplexes in place that aren't overwhelming. I guess I need to hear from a builder on that. Is that economical? But that strikes me as a possibility. Next question.
Thanks, Gary. Elizabeth.
Well, thank you, Gary. Thanks for being such an amazing example. I wanted to ask just broadly, like, because you're involved in so many different things and you seem to be activating on many different levels, where do you feel like the sort of core responsibility for community building lies? Who would you say sort of has the ultimate responsibility for making sure community is getting built?
Well, that's not an easy one either, is it? There are some groups that are pushing the idea of community building, certainly the Community Foundation itself. But just all of the things that are being done, it works together. It'd be nice maybe if there was more connection, but so many groups are doing this independently because they want to. They have their little niche. From Greentown to all of the groups that work with the schools. So it kind of just organically works. But sometimes a little leadership, a little push is helpful. Something maybe to get the bats working a little bit better. I'm serious when I talk about a contest for the strongest neighborhood. I think that would really be interesting to people to get involved. And once they're competing for something, they're going to be more motivated and more interested in making it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Janine.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for being here. You mentioned housing. It was very nice to hear that. You know a lot of people like you. I like you. What are your ideas for mobilizing our community to impact the R1 or single family housing to achieve some of the goals that you just mentioned?
Well, as you know, the rules are changing. And so we need to adjust to those new rules and try to do it with the least negative impact, but embrace them, make it work. So how do we do that? As groups, we can talk about ways to do it. Talk to your city council.
Thanks. Lou.
Yes, thank you. Gary, I never met you, but listening and watching you for 15 minutes, I know why you won that award. please give me some ideas on how to organize or plan for a contest for the strongest neighborhood.
Well, this was just an idea of a few minutes ago. So Lou, I haven't, it's not baked, but Strong Towns has this contest, and they have a set of rules and a set of questions that they ask each of the contestants. And I went through that one time, as I told you, and probably won't do it again, but it could be organized. I don't know which group would want to take that on. Probably not Greentown, but maybe the Community Foundation, or maybe we'll form a new group that wants to do this. Maybe I'll put you in charge, Lou. What do you think?
Thank you, up to that point.
Good to meet you.
Thanks, Lou and Gary. Are there any other questions? Liz?
Yes, Gary. Have you had any experience with helping people organize the sharing of materials? We have a tall ladder. Somebody else has the right hoe or shovel. Somebody else has a picnic table they can move if you are having a bigger party, so that we need to buy less, throw away less, and share.
That's a great idea. I think there are some sharing co-ops that have formed from time to time, but I'm not aware of one in our town. It's a good idea, though. It's probably being done within some of these groups. I bet the churches have groups like this that share things, and maybe some of the neighborhoods, and maybe some of the neighborhoods that have active newsletters are doing this as well. I'm not in such a neighborhood, but that could be one of the features, one of the attributes of a strong neighborhood, and maybe something that is done. I don't know if it'd be something appropriate for the bats. You tell me, Harry, but probably not. Yeah, it's a good idea, though.
Thanks, Liz and Gary. Eric?
Hi, Gary. You were talking about a way of providing more economical housing. One of the things you didn't touch on is accessory dwelling units. What's your feelings about that?
Well, those are more affordable for sure. They're smaller. They pop up in backyards, and now they can be within 4 foot of a property line. So that can be a challenge for your neighbors. But if they're built nicely, that will add to the housing stock. I think a lot of them are built for reasons of maybe getting a family member into the backyard. I thought about it myself, to tell you the truth. I just felt it made too much of an impact for me. We didn't want to go there. But that is a way to build up some housing. I know down the street from us on Harrington, there is just 2 or 3 doors down, an ADU was put in the backyard, and the owner had his parents living there and rented out the front of the house. He lives in the corner across from you, so
Yes.
it's his other house. So that particular one, it was a duplex in front and a ADU in the back. So there's 3 on a single family lot, 3 different people who are living there. And maybe there's a couple extra cars in the front because of it, but otherwise it doesn't impact the neighborhood at all.
As a volunteer at the History Museum, I was doing Zoom talks with people who were either looking for ADUs, a builder who did construction of ADUs, people that already owned one and responded to my questions about how it affected their living style. So that was recorded on Zoom, and it's actually in the archives at the History Museum now. I did that during the pandemic when we were not doing in-person interviews. So I have a little bit of insight also, knowing that my neighbor across the way had a ADU built on the property down Harrington for his mother and father, and that has been very successful.
Yeah.
I'm sure that people that are here today realize that there's been construction in their neighborhood. You see construction trucks lining the street, but you don't see anything going on other than hearing the pounding of nails, hammers, and drills and saws. It's all occurring in the backyard of those houses.
Yep, that's right.
But it is going on.
It is. Yeah, there's another one right in the corner, the other corner, just across from you. An ADU is going in the backyard. In fact, I was over there the other day and got a couple of wheelbarrows of really good soil that they had dug up they didn't need. So I couldn't let that just go be taken off to the dump. I grabbed it. But thanks, Eric, for doing that and for your volunteering at the museum.
Thanks, Eric and Gary. I also wanted to mention Adine in the chat put up, getting back to one of the earlier questions, that he's working with a donor who's engaged the Day Work Center to provide such a total sharing resource for those of you who aren't looking at the chat. Cindy.
Thank you very much. Hey, I'm a little bit familiar with BAT, not totally, but we live in such an eclectic area where we have some elderly people living in their homes for 50 or 60 years. They have kids who live across the country who worry about their safety and, you know, their ability to maintain their home. Does BAT have any component for like reaching out to those neighbors maybe that you don't see very much, that you know could use a little assistance to help, you know, build strong neighborhoods and take care of everyone in the neighborhood?
Well, that certainly is part of the BAT program. I'm more than happy to let Harry answer that question too, but they do reach out. They do know who the neighbors are. They do know who needs who's elderly and might need some medical assistance or some extra help. And so that is a big piece of it.
Thank you.
Harry, are you there?
Thanks, Cindy. Back to Adine.
So Gary, this is a little bit more of a complicated question. So I'm learning about funders who in institutions that believe community issues like hidden poverty or weak environmental programs, for instance, are no longer issues and don't require their funding support in Los Altos and some of the surrounding communities. How do we address that misperception?
That we don't need help?
Yep.
Well,
that everything is shiny and good.
Yeah. Well, we're compared to some communities, I guess we are pretty blessed. But we're all dealing with the climate crisis. So maybe that's another hook. There are some community little groups that form around cool blocks and other that program, for example, where people get together who are motivated to try to reduce their impact and learn about what they can do. That would be helpful. Set up that kind of grouping. Maybe that's also could be a competition. Just even amongst yourself, what can I do to reduce my carbon footprint? And sometimes it's just being able to know what's possible. So Greentown has a program. Connie Miller is a big part of that, where we're looking, in fact, we had some summer interns working on it. What are the incentives and rebates that are available to take advantage of if I want to switch to a heat pump water heater or heat pump heating and cooling, which is expensive. So rebates and incentives are important, even here in Los Altos, and they are available. And then this is new territory, so getting some experience or some feedback on who are the good contractors, who are the ones who are knowledgeable. That's something that Greentown is able to provide. But we need to make sure that word gets out.
Thanks, Adine and Gary. Daphne.
Hi. Gary, I just wanted to thank you for your work on the 500 trees. It's been really neat to kind of see the progress, and it's amazing that you're already, I think you said 417 or
Yeah, 417 is
like,
tomorrow.
yeah, it's awesome. I hope you have a big celebration at 500.
Oh, for sure.
So my question is, what would be your suggestion for people who are working, people who are younger, how they can get involved in the community? You know, you talked about getting involved after you retired. So what were some of the barriers? Was it just work schedule that you weren't as kind of connected when you were working? Or, you know, how would you get more younger people involved, or people who are still, you know, still have young kids or still, you know, dual income families?
Well, it certainly was the issue for me. When I'm working, that was my focus, and sometimes for long hours. So coming home and just having a chance to relax and not think about anything else was pretty pleasant. So yeah, I didn't do much, but then I missed being active. So it didn't take me long before I started moving in this direction of community involvement. But how to get younger people involved? Well, some people just will make a point of it. I think there's more awareness now that this is important, and we have so many opportunities. I think we can fit people in at whatever level of time and that they can spare. It can be all of the groups that I mentioned. Every one of those can be something that people can be involved in. So it's just, let's get the word out. So I'm warming up to the idea of a strong town, strong neighborhood competition. That'll get the word out.
Thanks, Daphne and Gary. I know some of you may need to leave at 9:30, but before you go, a few announcements. Our next meeting will be on Friday, December 15th, 2 weeks from today, from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Please join us for a great discussion entitled Los Altos Downtown Vision Plan plus Housing Element equal ? With Fred Kent, founder of Placemaking Movement, Project for Public Spaces, the Social Life Project, and Placemaking X. If you would like to be added to the LACC mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. That email address is posted in chat for your convenience. And a big thank you, as always, to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing LACC with financial and in-kind support. Are there any other, I see Lou, your hand's back up there. So fire away.
Thank you. Gary, about engaging neighbors and building neighborhoods. Some of us who are trying to build a neighborhood have been here for many, many years, are older and are kind of low tech, and our children are gone or have none, and the neighbors are new. We came from a different part of the country, but they came from a different part of the world. They have a different first language. They have young children. They're in the same neighborhood. How do we engage these new neighbors and get them involved in building a stronger neighborhood?
Well, it's just the old-fashioned way of getting out there and starting to talk to people. Maybe those new experiences that they bring in, that opens the door to, well, this is so interesting. I want to hear all about it, and that can start the conversation. But somehow you gotta meet them. So that's if we can get the block parties going again, that'd be one way. Get out there and meet people.
I live with a lady who does block parties. We can do that. Thank you, Gary.
Good deal.
A couple ideas from the chat. Liz said an international potluck. And I think which would be a great idea. And Nadine said, should it be a requirement that the 2023 Los Altos of the Year attend LACC meetings, which of course we on the steering committee love the idea. So are there at this time, are there any other questions from the attendees?
Well, let me just say thank you to everybody who showed up. I really am humbled and appreciate that. And thank you to the leadership team here for LACC. for doing this worthwhile project for so many years now.
Thanks for the kind words, Gary, and thank you once again for a great discussion today. We will look forward to seeing you all in a few weeks, and thanks again, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.